Both myself, my name is Mhairi, and this is my colleague Yantisa. We're actually with HOT, and we're going to be talking today about disaster management mapping for Indonesia. Okay. So HOT has been in Indonesia for quite a while. They do a couple of different projects, but the one that we're focusing on today is actually our InAware project, which is a project in collaboration with the Pacific Disaster Center and Peta Bencana, and it's actually funded by USAID. And what InAware is, it's this interface that you can see, and it's a web-based hazard monitoring and early warning decision support system made for the National Disaster Management Agency of Indonesia, BNPB. So, what InAware was actually customized and developed by Pacific Disaster Center, modeled off of their own disasterware software. They also do customizations for several other countries, including Vietnam, which is called VinAware. And what it does is it brings on a lot of different data sets of hazards that are going on throughout the country. So you'll have layers, actually I think it's easier to see here. So you'll bring in data about volcanic activity, landslides, seismic activity, flood events, and anything else that is fed through or hazards that are happening. So other parts of the platform include, you've got some of the options of the layers. And one of the options was to bring in infrastructure data, but when we came on with the project, they actually only had, if you can see just at the bottom left corner, infrastructure data including transportation and nuclear power plants. And some of these layers weren't even working as well. So what HOT came on to do was actually to help map out key LifeLine infrastructure for two cities. And we worked with the government and also with our partners looking at what features would need to be collected, which you can see up here. So we were looking at financial, transportation and communications, water supply systems, which were quite heavily important, especially in Jakarta, where a lot of flooding takes place. And our partners, Peta Bencana, who developed their software with MIT, and it uses Cognicity software, and it's a real-time reporting system using Twitter, so citizens can just report in with Twitter. And they were really focused on, at the time, really on flooding, so they required the water supply systems. It was important to see where pumping stations were, waterways, water gates and reservoirs. And they also did the reporting using admin boundaries. So this is just the features, the data models for the features, and then we also looked at what attributes would need to be collected for each feature. So this is again an example using the pumping station. Of course you'd have the key values for what the feature actually is. We would also get the name, the address, operator, pump unit, how many pumps were there, the elevation above sea level, capacity of the pumps, the building levels, and the building structure. So for some of the other features, we collected additional information, which looked at tags such as, could these buildings be an evacuation center? What sort of shelter type did it have? Did they have water sources, kitchen facilities, toilet facilities, a backup generator? And also we collected more information on the building itself, such as the material of the walls, the floor, the roof, and the condition, because this information could be used in hazard modeling. So we found that that was really important to collect, and of course our data model has evolved as we moved to another city and as we collaborated with other organizations to get feedback into what they would find useful. So this is Indonesia, and our projects are actually focused on Java, the island of Java, which is the most densely populated island. So we first started in Surabaya, and that was last year in October. And Surabaya has about 10 million people. It's the second largest city, most populated city in Indonesia, and we mapped there for 5 months before moving over to Jakarta earlier this year in April. And we predict to be mapping until next month. Jakarta is home to 30 million people. It's very prone to flooding, but Indonesia in general is in quite a hazard-prone area, I would say. It has the most active volcanoes in the world, sits on the ring of fire, so there's a lot to be able to do there to help. So just talking a bit about the mapping methodology, we kind of follow the same process that a lot of different people mapping in OSM do, looking at importing existing data sets, remote mapping through digitizing aerial imagery, so we can get the footprint buildings, road networks, waterways, so we have those shapes in there before going out on the ground and actually collecting detailed attribute information to help speed up the process. And again, we use a variety of tools. The tasking manager is to do with all the digitizing. It also really helps to organize our teams, which we find more than, and for ground collection, so after we've done the digitizing, we were actually sending our teams out equipped with Open Map Kit, field papers, GPS units, and they would get around by motorbike. It's the quickest method of transport in Indonesia. You can bypass all that nasty traffic jams. But yeah, so what I was going to say, more than the tools really help to have things sort of standardized, make things flow a lot easier, but what I found, and our team did an amazing job at this, is really the team structure. When you're dealing with such a large scale mapping project and dealing with so much data, it's vital that you're organized. And so Dewi and Wulan are our two mapping team supervisors, and they're amazing. They've been with the team for quite a while in Indonesia, so they have a lot of experience, but their team management ability and their organizational skills are just amazing. So they kind of split up the cities half and half between them, and then they would have 2 QAs under each of them, quality assurance specialists, and then under these quality assurance specialists there would be 2 teams of data entry specialists that would actually go out into the field and collect the data. And I'll explain the workflow a bit more. So this is just an example of Jakarta, how it was split up. So they're looking at it, the red boundaries, those are the sub-district level, and I guess in OSM terms, that would be admin level 6. And just to show it how the split would happen. And this is just a bit of our workflow. I wanted to share this because I'm sure everyone has a different way of doing it, and we really want to always improve and get feedback. Maybe you guys have a more efficient way that it's done. So, like I said in the beginning, in the tasking manager, you've got your satellite imagery, the team boundaries, which were our admin boundaries. We're very fortunate to have support from the USA Geo Center that gave us very current data, no cloud coverage, thank you. And they got it to us really quick, which made it so good. And they were able to digitize before going into the field, and everything is quite up to date. So once they've done that, and it goes into OpenStreetMap, we would download the OpenStreetMap data onto OpenMapKit, have that data model you saw in a questionnaire through OpenDataKit, so everything's standard, you can just multiple choice, and it's to try and keep that consistency of tags that are put towards each feature, because like you said, if you've got incorrect attributes, it can be a nightmare, basically. So we'd have satellite imagery on the phone as MB tiles, and then the team boundary, admin boundaries. They'd go out, collect the data, and so we always talk about validation and how important it is. So they were really rigorous at doing it in 3 rounds. So the first round was they'd come back from the field, they'd actually take the .osm file off of the phone, manually, not using Possum to send it up, because we did send it there to have as a backup, but because there's so many teams, at the time there's no ability to do filtering by username or by date, so it's a little harder to handle. So they would actually go through each attribute, each feature, and then download a layer from OpenStreetMap, have their data from the phone, and actually go through and connect their data to each feature. And after they do that, they would send it back up to OpenStreetMap. Then the quality assurance specialist would go with the project set up in the tasking manager, go through another round of validation. And then the final round of validation was the team supervisors. They would download it into JOSM, and using the different tool, the validation tool, OSM-CHA, they would go through and be as rigorous as possible. So these are just to show the infrastructure data that was collected in Surabaya. And they actually collected over 6,000 infrastructure details, so attribute information for it, mapped and validated over 640,000 buildings, and 4,600 kilometers of road. So as well as looking at data stats, we also want to make sure that the quality is increasing. So even though we're only focused on key LifeLine infrastructure, we were looking at all the roads and the buildings. And so trying to look at it, really it was just quite a straightforward process of using JOSM and really selecting within an admin boundary of a village, looking at like what are the error warnings that were coming up per object and the ratio of that to see that we were actually getting better quality data as well. I'm probably going to skip this because it might be too long. And this is just to show we're currently in Jakarta, just to get an idea of how much ground they're covering per month. It's about 10 sub-districts. It's been averaging 10 sub-districts a month, which vary in size, but more importantly in density of what they're mapping. This is the last month, so there are actually 4 sub-districts, and the team is currently in the Thousand Islands, which is just to the north off of the coast, about 45 kilometers. There's, I think, 108 islands, but luckily only 10 are inhabited, otherwise it would take a while. Yeah, geocenter imagery, which helped us to map out what we needed before going out. And this is just Jakarta today. I think this is, well, actually it's August. And there were, so far we've done over 100,000 buildings, over 2,000 kilometers of road. And yeah, so originally one of the biggest setbacks, like any project, you learn and there's challenges and everything, so we actually had to push back our estimated, oh, sorry, this is terrible, our estimated timeline. And this was just because of things that came up that we didn't anticipate, like it wasn't meant to be a rainy season, but there was lots of raining that would take place in the afternoon, so they had to get out in the morning. Traffic jams, roads being inaccessible by bike, having to go by foot. There was a big learning curve. Ian will probably talk more about it because we really focus on hiring locally and working with the community and everything. So of course introducing OSM and new tools and skills, there's a bit of a steep learning curve. Yeah, again, I'm going to hand over to Ian.
Thank you, Mhairi. Okay, so what we learned also from the project is that we're not only collecting the data, but we try to build the ecosystem to maintain the data and also to grow the data. And this is how we also involve other partners as well. So the first one is the provincial government, because they're the one who have the big picture needs of the data itself. So initially, before we started the project, we always engage with the local disaster management agency in the provincial level, like with the BPBD East Java and also with the BPBD Jakarta about their needs of the data. I mean, what types of data collected. What Mhairi showed in the initial is that the data model is not only built by our own perceived needs, but also what is the request from the government. I remember that there's a meeting when we have a meeting with the BPBD Jakarta, and they collected all the key stuff and saying, okay, so there's this guy, this team of people will collect data. What data that you need? Okay, come. Ask anything. And then, yeah, and then we also try to answer that kind of challenge, because we know that this data will be used during day-to-day operation in disaster management. And then they also, on the other, as a negotiation, the BPBD is the one that provide the permission, like the permission letter. If you want to come to each of the village office, that is later our second biggest stakeholder, is that you need to have permission that you do it for official needs. Well, this project already backed up by the National Disaster Management Agency. It will be slightly different in the local level. You also need local approval. So the second part is that the village official. So this is actually also partially, this is also like government participatory mapping, because in every village office, we come to them and then we ask them their sub-village boundary. We ask them where are the flood areas so that we can digitize that information later in digital maps. And then we also record like where are the evacuation camp during floods, and then the routing, like what is the route, the evacuation routes for each of these villages. So each of our member of our team is actually come to each of the village office and then collect the data directly from the official sources. And then we also work in the local university as well. Like in Surabaya, we work with the 10th November Institute of Technology. In Jakarta, we work with the University of Indonesia in how they can use the data, in how they can use the data as part of their research. Because we believe that even after our projects finish, we need to have someone to continue collecting the data, to continue maintaining the data. And based on our experiences, university is having the strategic position in that sense, because they have been working with us in the Mapathon, like introducing their students about OpenStreetMap, and even doing workshop in how to utilize the data, so that the lecturer, researcher, government agency, they can also learn on how to use the OSM data. And then this is the example of what we did in the field. So the one that draw the boundaries is the village official. So it's not us, but it's them drawing directly in the field paper, or we just printed the satellite imagery and then later we will digitize this information in OSM. So this is their handwriting, this is original from them. And this is also the result that we give back to the village office. So they know before we start the project, sir, can you help us? Miss, can you help us with collecting the data? Later you will get this. This is the printed big format well, not really big as map previously, but this is A2, A1 size maps that we give back in the printed format, frame, and ready to be put in their wall. This is something that they really love. I mean, because this is, well, my village office haven't had this kind of map before, and it's really complete. It shows them like the boundary of the sub-village level. Even at some area, we also have up until sub-village level or in the neighborhood level. This is, we also draw the evacuation routes. This is specific use for the disaster management agency, and the one who determine the routes is the local people, because sometimes when you have top-down approach, you determine the routes, then it would not go really well in the community level, because no, that road is not safe, no, that's dangerous if you pass that road. So we are collecting the data directly from community, so it's more bottom-up, and then it's later used by the decision maker in the disaster management agency offices. Thank you. Questions, if any?
I can just talk really loud. How do you plan on maintaining those maps? Have you turned any of that responsibility over to the local officials?
Well, yes and no. So it depends on which cities. So like for Surabaya, we try to somehow hand over all of the data that we collected to the government official. But the problem is, city of Surabaya did not have disaster management agency in the city level. They have that in provincial level, but that's too big. But they don't, okay, this is only one city out of tens of cities that they maintain. But they still kind of appreciate that. But in Jakarta, that's a different case, because we already work together with Jakarta Disaster Management Agency start in 2013. Well, they already have staff that already aware of OpenStreetMap. They already have staff that already know how to use the data, and they're the one who really benefits from this activity. So they're the one who maintain the data, and they're the one who regularly use the data as a decision-making tool. Like they give it to their official, they give it to the governor. Even there is one chance when the governor use OpenStreetMap maps in the television interview, they use it as an official. So this is the status of the flood right now. So that's how the government really understand the value of the data.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the other project, since they've been doing 2013, working with the universities, they've really done an amazing job at kind of connecting the National Disaster Management Agency with these universities to continue with the work and doing mapathons and updating. So that's been a really good connection there. Any other questions? Oh yeah.
Did you mean that this stage of planning the evacuation routes was done with the community? The community actually selected the routes, and how did that square with whatever official plans the government already had in place, the local authority already had in place?
Yeah. What we mean by community is actually the local government official that live in the community, because like we work directly with the head of the village or like with the village official. They're already there for several years, so they know what happens in the past years, like which evacuation routes works better than the other one. So we're collecting this data. Sometimes when we map up until sub-village level, we talk with the head of the sub-village as well, and he usually have the most experience, because this position is not really official in terms of you being appointed by other community member, so it's kind of up for your life position, yeah, for the entire life. You're being there and you know what happens, you know the experiences, and what we need to do is just capturing that knowledge and then put it in the digital format. Okay. Thank you very much.